Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
We're not tracking a huge geopolitical trend or, digging into ancient history. Instead, we're looking at a deeply personal piece of writing.
A confession, really.
Exactly. A designer's op-ed that serves as a perfect snapshot of one of the biggest cultural shifts happening right now.
The unstoppable rise of Hallyu, the Korean wave.
Absolutely.
And it's such a gold mine for a deep dive like this because it's an insider's view. It goes way beyond just a simple cultural critique.
Right.
We're not just looking at, consumption stats or viral clicks. We're looking at a profound change in perspective from someone whose entire job is to spot and define global aesthetics.
And the whole story arc is just fascinating. It's this journey from a quiet, almost professional rejection to complete and total immersion.
Enthusiastic immersion.
Yeah. So our mission today is to really get into this designer shift.
Mm-hmm.
She kept her distance from Korean culture for years, and we want to use her story to understand how the West's view of K-content has moved from, let's say, skepticism
to acceptance, and now even inspiration.
And the key thing for you to take away from this is crucial. This isn't just about what we're watching or listening to. It's a fundamental recalibration of what we consider beautiful, how stories are told on a global scale.
What's so striking right at the top is what you could call the initial paradox. I mean, here you have a prominent fashion designer. Her life is about tracking global trends. She should have been the first one on board, right?
The earliest adopter. She should have been celebrating Hallyu's visual power from day one.
But she actively avoided it for years. She was convinced it was, in her words, too extravagant, too commercial, and this is the real killer in the art world. Too perfect.
I find that paradox so telling because it perfectly frames her professional bias. She admits it. For years, she saw the wave coming.
Oh, she saw it clearly.
First the dramas, then the idol groups. But she kept her distance. And that stance, it really mirrors the initial reaction we saw across Western media, a sort of dismissiveness.
A skepticism, for sure. She, and a lot of critics like her, saw the content as being, overly commercial. And because of that, it was seen as lacking.
Authenticity.
The magic word. That perceived authenticity of established Western art.
And that professional distance, it has a clear historical context, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When K-dramas first started to really hit the global stage, especially in the US and Europe, the reception was, she recounts it as being pretty dismissive.
I remember that. They were labeled overly dramatic, addictive, and sometimes, frankly, low grade.
There's a real cultural snobbery at play there. A subtle one, but it was there.
And then K-pop arrived. And it was defined by this almost unbelievable perfection.
That perfect synchronicity of the boy bands, the choreography was just flawless.
And the sweet, lively images of the girl groups. It was so polished, so high budget, so industrialized. And that was immediately interpreted as manufactured.
Right. And in a Western art context that values, raw sincerity or visible struggle, that manufactured label is a death sentence. It translates directly to not genuine.
That's the core tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
Her professional bias was just steeped in this Western aesthetic tradition that, especially since the 60s, has put the spontaneous and the messy on a pedestal.
Yes. Think about it. The visible brushstrokes on a painting, the deliberately unkempt look of grunge fashion, the raw sound of garage rock, that's what's been valued.
And K-pop's flawless production was the absolute opposite of that. It was the commercial, technological antithesis of that whole value system.
So she rejected it. It was a philosophical rejection.
But now the shift is just complete. She's in a state of what she calls total immersion.
It's amazing. She talks about repeating Netflix movies with her kids, putting on K-pop playlists in the car. And professionally, she's now exploring color palettes and styles taken directly from this content.
She even compares it to being a child first learning fashion.
All that distance, the skepticism, that critical wall she had built up, it's just gone. Completely crumbled.
And her final conclusion is so definitive. This is the real aha moment of the whole piece. She doesn't call it a trend.
No, she's very clear about that. She says, with all the weight of her professional experience, this is a worldwide cultural transformation. It is beautiful, complex, and enduring.
That's a massive statement from someone whose job it is to spot trends. To call it enduring, to call it a transformation.
It's a huge admission, a total reversal.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's start with what built the wall in the first place. Section 1. The wall of perfection, why Hallyu was initially rejected. We need to really understand the artistic and societal biases that kept her away for so long.
The primary resistance, as she frames it, really stemmed from what she saw as a deep, uh, an irreconcilable conflict with artistic authenticity.
Okay.
She believed that because K-pop was, in her words, overly controlled and meticulously refined, it couldn't be authentic. It lacked something fundamental she looked for in art.
Let's stay on that for a second. Why is control seen as the opposite of authenticity? It really comes down to effort, doesn't it?
It does. In a lot of Western art, the effort has to be performative. You have to see the struggle. The artist needs to appear vulnerable or tortured even for the work to feel sincere.
And K-pop hides all of that.
It hides all of it. The training system is famously brutal, relentless, but the final product is designed to look effortless, seamless, almost inhumanly perfect.
So she saw that perfection, that lack of visible struggle, and read it as the lack of soul.
Exactly. She saw the high gloss, the big budget, the meticulous control, and she concluded that the spontaneity, the vulnerability, all the things that make art feel real to her, they had been engineered right out of it.
What's really interesting is how that critique of commercialism became almost a moral one. It wasn't just an aesthetic preference.
No, it went deeper. She felt the lack of rough edges made the art form feel synthetic. A product designed purely for mass consumption, not genuine expression. Everything was overly controlled and meticulously refined.
Okay, so that's the artistic side of the wall. But that was reinforced by something else, wasn't it? Something she saw in the culture itself.
Mm-hmm. Her intellectual rejection got a massive boost when she looked beyond the art and at the societal systems she felt were behind it. The op-ed is very clear that her biggest discomfort was with Korea's strict standards of beauty.
And this is where her whole personal philosophy about fashion and freedom just collides head-on with a cultural system she saw as, well, as coercive.
She cites some very specific, very well-publicized concerns: the obsession with appearance, the cultural acceptance of frequent plastic surgery, and what she calls the relentless pursuit of a perfect body.
And her own philosophy is the polar opposite. She says fashion should be about supporting an individual's self-expression.
Right. It should be about defining yourself on your own terms, not chasing some unattainable ideal or, sculpting your image to fit a rigid, pre-approved mold. She just found the whole system to be completely at odds with her deepest beliefs.
But she adds a really important nuance there.
He does, and it's crucial. She's very careful to say this isn't a moral judgment on any individual's choice. She says, I don't deny the right to personal transformation.
Her resistance is aimed at the system.
The system, the external force that she felt was dictating and defining beauty through these very specific, commercialized, and often impossible standards.
So she was afraid that all this brilliant cultural content was also acting as a kind of delivery system for a potentially toxic societal pressure.
That's it, that systemic pressure, the sheer weight of expectation around physical perfection. That was the foundation of her wall of rejection. It was very, very sturdy.
So for years, that wall stood firm. You've got professional skepticism on one side and this deep personal discomfort on the other. But, good art always finds a way through.
It does. And that brings us to the breakthrough. The unexpected breakthrough content that shattered preconceptions. And the key here is that her conversion wasn't some intellectual change of heart.
No, it was a sensory seduction. It was completely accidental.
The pivotal moment was a musical hook, just the song. She accidentally heard Apartment by Rosé of Blackpink and Bruno Mars.
She wasn't looking for Hallyu.
It found her. And the effect was immediate. She writes that she was instantly, completely captivated.
And what's key here is that the captivation was visual. It was the music video.
Yes. She describes it as a visual banquet. Not just nice to look at, but this perfect mix of playful energy, nostalgia, real glamour, and incredibly sophisticated design.
And as a designer, there was a specific visual reference that broke through her skepticism.
The color palette, the intentional use of pink and black.
Right. She said it immediately made her think of the movie Grease, but it was reinterpreted with this uniquely K-pop level of refinement and polish.
And that connection is so powerful because it proves the universality of Hallyu's aesthetic language. It can reference a known Western cultural touchstone.
Like the 50s look of Grease, the leather, the pink.
Exactly. But the execution is so high quality, so clean, and so unique that it's not just an imitation, it's something new. And for a designer who lives for intentional, sophisticated visuals, seeing that was, well, it was irresistible.
That was the first crack in the wall.
A big one.
And that accidental hook led straight to a deeper dive.
An immediate follow-up. She found herself captivated by the Netflix animated movie K-pop Demon Hunters.
The story of her immersion here is so telling. First, the visual feast that speaks to her professionally. Then, the family involvement that makes it emotional.
Right. She says she watched it the first time out of professional curiosity, but the second time was with her children, and they were all singing along to the sweet and pleasant songs.
She admits, we were instantly captivated.
And this is how it happens. This is the mechanism of cultural transmission. Hallyu so often enters a Western household through the kids, the younger generation.
Because they don't have the intellectual biases of their parents.
Exactly. They just see something high quality and enjoyable, and they end up disarming the skeptical adults through that shared family experience.
Speaking of the younger generation, there was one more catalyst, right? The final push.
The final and strongest one. Her 15-year-old daughter, who was already a K-drama expert.
Of course.
She persuaded her mom to watch her favorite shows, and the result wasn't just, a casual evening of TV. It was a genuine emotional breakthrough.
She writes, "Something opened wide inside me." And this is the moment. This is when the emotional sincerity of the content just completely steamrolls her professional bias against perfection and commercialism.
She starts talking about K-dramas and movies possessing a kind of magical quality, a sincerity and a warmth that she finds honestly pretty rare in Western entertainment right now.
Which is so often focused on irony or cynicism or meta-commentary.
Yeah. Right, and what's fascinating is how self-aware she is. She admits the stories can be predictable. Sometimes they're even cliché.
She says that doesn't matter. Not in the slightest.
And the reason it doesn't matter is the delivery. The execution is so sincere and emotionally open that it just disarms you immediately.
The actors are so committed, the emotional stakes feel so high, it bypasses your intellectual critique.
It doesn't need to surprise you with a plot twist. It just needs to make you feel something deeply and immediately.
And that sincerity is what finally shattered her wall. The idea that even if an art form is meticulously refined, perfect lighting, flawless production, the emotional core can still be pure, yet ironic, and deeply honest.
And if you step back, that combination is the secret sauce for Hallyu's global success, isn't it?
I think so.
It gives you the high production value that audiences demand now, that technical excellence, but it combines it with an emotional purity that a lot of people find incredibly refreshing.
Especially compared to the often jaded or overly complex stuff dominating their own local content.
So once that emotional wall was breached, her professional instincts just took over.
And that led her straight into a forensic analysis of the design language. Which brings us to our next section, the design language analyzing K-aesthetics and duality.
Right. As soon as she got past that initial bias, she admits she became, professionally obsessed.
She couldn't tear her eyes away from the visuals.
The styling, the set design, the color palettes, she suddenly recognized this incredibly sophisticated fusion happening.
East meets West.
Yeah.
Tradition meeting futurism.
And she finally saw it for what it was. Ingenious yet thoroughly intentional design. This wasn't just accidental beauty, it was a fully realized design language.
That word intentional is so important.
Paramount. She realized that every single visual element, from the texture of a fabric to the tone of the lighting, was being carefully controlled by artists who have a profound understanding of how color and form tell a story.
Let's dig into her analysis of color a bit more. She said every scene seemed to be meticulously managed by someone who just gets how color conveys emotion, often better than dialogue.
We see this all the time in K content. The color is bold, it's symbolic. And she noted that costumes aren't just clothes. They are used to explicitly signify a character's development.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. A character might start the series in very structured, low-saturation business clothes, all blacks and grays. And as they go through an emotional awakening, their wardrobe shifts to, say, flowy fabrics and bright, warm colors.
That's a nonverbal cue, an immediate communication that their inner state has changed.
Exactly. And that visual literacy lets the audience, anywhere in the world, grasp these complex emotional arcs just through the visuals. No translation needed.
She says this analysis made her fall in love with fashion again from a completely new perspective. It reminded her of its power as a storytelling tool.
But here's where her analysis gets really, really powerful. Because it would be easy to just stop there, right? Hallyu is bright, it's pastels, it's dreamy romance. But she quickly realized the movement's power isn't just in the soft stuff. Its endurance comes from its embrace of contradiction, of duality, the light and the shadow.
And she points directly to Squid Game, as the prime example.
Of course, that violent dystopian world is the thematic opposite of a soft romantic drama. It is a direct reflection of the harshest realities of Korean society.
The intense economic pressure, the darkness, the human cost of that relentless striving for perfection she was so wary of.
But what fascinated her as a designer was the visual wrapper on that darkness. Squid Game uses these profoundly childish, simple aesthetics
The green tracksuits, the pink masks, those colorful, almost cartoonish playgrounds.
to stage these moments of horrific adult existential violence.
That juxtaposition is the very definition of intentional design. The beautiful surfaces aren't just there to look nice.
They're an active part of the narrative. This simple, childlike look tricks you into a false sense of security, which makes the shock of the violence that much more brutal when it hits.
And that realization just transforms her entire critique. Hallyu is no longer simple commercial escapism in her eyes.
No, now it's complex, sophisticated cultural commentary. And she concludes that this duality, this ability to hold contradiction, to be painfully realistic and fantastically surreal at the same time, is what makes the culture more fascinating.
Which leads her to her final conclusion on this. Hallyu is not a trend.
Not a trend, it's a cultural movement. And it's rooted in sophisticated storytelling, visual excellence, and a really profound emotional sincerity.
She's still clear-eyed about the flaws, though.
Oh yeah, she doesn't forget them. The pressure to conform, the unrealistic body ideals, the commercialization of art, she acknowledges they are all still there.
But she realizes that the joy, the talent, the color, the creativity, they are equally present. And the world is clearly craving that difficult, contradictory mix.
Absolutely.
So she's processed the emotion, she's analyzed the design. Where does that leave her? Let's move to Hallyu's long-term impact on global fashion and personal connection.
Well, at this point, she is completely convinced. She believes Hallyu is going to have a profound long-term influence on global aesthetics.
She makes a great comparison here.
She does. She points to the proven success of K-beauty, which completely redefined global standards for skincare, flawless skin texture.
Right.
And she says K-style is now doing the exact same thing. It's following that path, and it's fundamentally reshaping how the world dresses.
So let's break down that tangible impact. What specific trends are we seeing?
She lists a few that are already infiltrating mainstream global fashion. First, the widespread adoption of oversized silhouettes.
Comfort and volume.
Exactly. Then, the preference for softer pastel tones, which are often layered in really unexpected combinations.
We're also seeing much more gender-fluid styling.
A huge one, encouraging freedom outside of those rigid binaries. And finally, what she calls the art of witty layering.
Okay, that needs a little more explanation. What is witty layering?
It's not just throwing clothes on top of each other. It's a really calculated technique. It's about combining textures, colors, and volumes in ways that might seem counterintuitive to traditional Western fashion.
So like a detailed, high-collared shirt sticking out from under a chunky knit vest.
Or an unexpected athletic layer under a piece of tailored outerwear. It's a deliberately complex look that suggests the wearer has a story, that they're their own stylist. It signifies personality.
So the new aesthetic language, as she sees it, is a balance.
A beautiful balance. It has elegance, but it also has this youthful drama and restraint. It captures that energetic, experimental spirit of youth without losing sophistication.
Which is something she initially dismissed, that sophistication.
Exactly. And this blend is so relevant for today's consumer because it doesn't fit into the neat little boxes of previous fashion eras like minimalism or grunge. It's defined by ingenuity, not by sticking to one theme.
But there was one more thing about K-fashion that really resonated with her, that aligned with her core values as a designer.
This was the big one for her personally, the democratic element of it all.
What does she mean by that?
Well, think about high fashion in Paris or New York. So much of it is about visible status markers, big logos, instantly recognizable designer bags. It's about signaling wealth.
K-fashion, especially street style and in the dramas, seems to subvert that.
Completely. She emphasizes that you don't need high-end designer brands to achieve the look. What matters far more is the story you tell.
Through the silhouette, the color choice, the wit of how you put it together.
Yes. And that democratic approach, where style is about narrative and expression first, and status is a distant second, that aligns perfectly with her values. It shifts the focus from who made your clothes to how you creatively wear them. It basically democratizes taste.
So the emotional sincerity converted her, the aesthetic excellence impressed her professionally, but the deepest connection was yet to come. It was personal.
The emotional honesty on screen. This is where it all clicked into place for her.
She started seeing herself in the characters.
She did. She looked at the quiet, often introverted protagonists in K-dramas, or the vulnerable but strong girls in K-pop demon hunters, and she saw her younger self looking back at her.
And that's the moment Hallyu stops being this external other and becomes deeply personally relatable. It crosses the border.
Mm-hmm. And she gets very personal on the op-ed. She talks about her own youth, about having distinct red hair and always feeling different, singled out.
She remembers being bullied and just freezing up, not knowing how to respond.
And she talks about how she found her strength, not through confrontation, but through fashion.
She says choosing proper clothing, which for her meant structured, intentional outfits, was like putting on armor.
It was her shield. It gave her a sense of power and a voice even when she felt silent and vulnerable inside.
And that connection, looking back at her own life, it completely reframes her entire critique of perfection.
A total 180. She suddenly realized that the hyper-polished aesthetic she'd rejected wasn't necessarily about forcing conformity for someone who feels introverted or vulnerable or different.
Like her younger self.
Crafting that sophisticated aesthetic shell is a way to feel powerful. It protects the soft core inside. It allows you to navigate the world with confidence.
That realization is the final surrender.
It is. She understood that Hallyu offers something vital to a new generation all over the world. A world where you can be introverted and still be strong, where softness is a superpower, and where fashion is about storytelling, not just status.
So her final assessment.
It's the highest praise she could give. She says, Hallyu is not a wave that will recede. It is a massive tide that is fundamentally reshaping global aesthetic discourse.
And the fact that this skeptical, established Western designer didn't just convert, but now finds real continuous inspiration from it, that just underscores its power.
And if we want to take this up to the meta level, the whole experience suggests something profound culturally.
Go on.
This whole phenomenon, Hallyu, it might be what finally dismantles the shadow of cultural superiority that the West has held over Asian culture for so long.
The idea that for decades, the Western establishment felt it held the monopoly on what was authentic, what was high art, what was meaningful.
Exactly. Anything highly commercial, exported at scale from Asia, was so often dismissed as derivative or superficial. Now, the Western world, and this designer is our case study, is being converted, inspired, aesthetically educated by the very culture it initially dismissed as low grade.
It's definitive proof that excellence, emotional resonance, and sophisticated visual literacy, they don't belong to one region or one aesthetic tradition.
Not at all.
This has been a true deep dive, not just into a huge cultural shift, but into one person's complete, revealing change of heart. We've tracked her journey from this quiet rejection,
Rooted in professional bias and personal discomfort.
all the way to this profound, enthusiastic immersion, which was fueled by unexpected content, visual sophistication, and just a deep emotional sincerity.
We saw her view shift from seeing K-culture as purely commercial and superficial to recognizing its intentional design, its emotional honesty, and its capacity for that sophisticated contradiction we talked about.
Holding both the brilliant light and the painful darkness at the same time.
Yeah. Hallyu has offered a powerful new language for fashion and storytelling, one that's both global in scale and deeply personal in connection.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this? We've just analyzed the experience of a critical professional who, at the end of the day, admitted she was wrong. She was driven by skepticism and cultural prejudice.
And that moment of humility, of being open to being wrong, is what allowed her to find this renewed passion and creativity in her own work.
Which raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? If Hallyu could successfully disarm a mind that was so armed with professional skepticism and cultural bias, what other entrenched biases might we be holding on to?
About new art forms or emerging technologies or even just revolutionary ideas in our own careers that we haven't really taken the time to deep dive into yet.
The lesson from the designer seems pretty clear. Look beyond your initial judgment. Be willing to explore the complexity, the rich contradictions in any new creative movement.
Because the rewards, as she found, aren't just new knowledge. It's often immense personal and professional inspiration. That moment where you question your own long-held assumptions, that's where the best learning always begins.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.